Thanks for tuning in to the Vibrant Soul Society, the conversations where through words, the universe is exploring itself. I'm your host, Baba Sam, and today I'm welcome to the conversation, a beautiful soul and Laurel Ann Porter. So welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I love this topic.
So who is Laurel Ann?
Yeah, who is Laurelann? And who is Laurelann has been a journey for sure. Who is Laurelann has changed over time, certainly. So these days I call myself a shamanic artist. And so what that means, what I have learned I have the ability to do is I have the ability to use my shamanic energy medicine that I've trained in to channel through songs that are healing for myself and my community. So that to get to where I could do that, I was even just on a call with some friends the other day, and they said, "Oh, you look great. You look glowing." And I was like, "Oh, I was just writing a song." And it was like they could see the creativity and the spirit of creativity coming through just because I happen to have been working on something creative. So creativity is really where it's at for me. As long as I can have some creativity in my life, everything else can just find its own way.
Perfect. So before you became this shamanic artist, what was life like before that? What caused that shift, if you will?
Oh, yeah, the big story. So I pretty much was a workaholic. And I was a professor at a university. I had my own department. I was running my own department. And then 2020 happened and the pandemic hit. And I looked around at the world and I really thought the world was collapsing. I thought all the systems and structures were collapsing. From my perspective, I was like, okay, so nobody's going to take care of us. Not the government, not schools, not churches. No one is going to take care of us. And so we
Mm.
have to take care of ourselves and each other. And at first, it was, well, 2020 was such a nightmare of a year anyway. Let's try not to look too closely at it. But when I first had that moment, when everything shut down, for 1 week, I was actually blissful because I was like, I get to wake up every single day and just decide how to spend my time.
Mm.
And that felt so liberating, so liberating. And then everything started to fall to pieces. And I realized that there was going to have to be some deeper work to go through. And when everything happened, my partner and I, we got creative. We recorded an album because he was working gigs at the time. And I, as a university professor where everything was online, I had a really flexible schedule. And then when we released the album on Labor Day of 2020, then there's this sort of postpartum depression that happens. I was like, okay, now I've birthed this album. Now what do I do? And I got to the point where the summer was over and I was starting to think about having to go back to school and teach. And it took me 2 days just to write an email
Hmm.
because I was having such a gap, like the cognitive dissonance was so strong that I just could not figure out how to write a stupid work email. And I realized that year I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, fibromyalgia, and rheumatoid arthritis. And so that all happened in one calendar year. And for me, the thing that I realized is that life doesn't have to be painful and exhausting all the time. But because I was a workaholic, that's basically what I was doing to myself. I was making myself exhausted and in pain all the time. And my conditions that I have, I've been able to manage them through this shamanic energy transformation that I've done because they don't necessarily just go away. But when we learn how to heal the emotional wounds that have caused it, when we learn how to I had to reinvent my relationship to food as well, because for a long time I was a comfort food eater, right? And so going through that whole process, then I started to realize I don't think I want to be a professor anymore. Yeah, I took a leave of absence and my colleagues were great. They were like, "Oh, we just want you to get better." And I was like, "What if there is no better?"
Wow.
I was like, "What if this is it? Oh, a semester off is not going to fix my whole life." So then I started looking at The first thing I did is I actually got into the practice that I learned when I did my PhD. And that was a practice we call critical autoethnography. So that's a big fancy word to say that. So ethnography is the study of culture. Autoethnography is the study of myself and my own culture. Like, what is the culture of me? And the critical part of it is to actually look at what are our inherited beliefs that are no longer serving us? What are the inherited beliefs that are keeping us disempowered? And how can we unlearn all that and create a new way?
Exactly. So that's the real big thing that most people don't understand. And this was your wake-up call being a workaholic, was that you didn't realize how painful and exhausting it was because that was your reality. And I think a lot of people are like that too. They're just a workaholic, is just doing all this busy stuff, but they're ignoring themselves, if you will. So it's really interesting when you felt so liberated because there was no more work. It was just like, I got a break. Then you get, oh, now you start to see this inner
Yeah.
process. And then now you really get to see, who am I?
Yeah. Because 20 years ago, I wanted to be a shaman when I read Alberto Villoldo's book, right? And I was like, oh, that sounds amazing. I want to do that. But I thought it was crazy. I thought, oh, no one would do that. So instead, I went and got a PhD and became an academic. I thought that's what I was supposed to do.
Mm.
But then once I realized that I could basically create more opportunities for myself, that was really the big realization. And then I started to look around and see what would I want instead of this academic life. And it took a few months, but once I realized what the path was, sold my car to pay for shaman school, trained as a shaman, quit my job, and here I am. The rest is history.
It's great. You got a little sidetracked that during the way because we all fall into this trap. Like, we're supposed to do this. We're told that we're supposed to work this 9 to 5, we're supposed to do this schooling, we're supposed to do this. We
Right,
can really
right,
go to a thousand and one things with the supposed to, and then we
right.
forget our own voice.
Exactly. And speaking of voice, I'm so glad you phrased it that way because so I've been a singer all my life. I've always sung. I've always been musical. My whole family was musical. But what I didn't know until after I went through the whole training of shamanic energy medicine, I didn't know that my voice is actually part of my medicine.
Hmm.
It wasn't until during our training, they take us through a pretty standard, fixed, sort of rigorous kind of training, and they tell us not to try to mix things, to just give their tactics and strategies their sort of way, their time. And then at the end, they say, okay, now make it your own. Now go do anything you want to. And I think for me personally, because I was always like the straight A student and the perfectionist and the workaholic, even in that training, I was still trying to fit, that it was a new box. It was a fancy box. It was a very pretty box. It was a wonderful box. Like, it was a much more magical box than the other box I was in. But still, it was a container. This is actually a recent realization of mine. A few months ago, I realized I am not that container and I am doing something different. And I think every single one of us has the capacity to find that thing, whatever that is.
Exactly.
And but we have to have that space. We have to give ourselves that space so that we have to be okay with the mysteries. We have to be okay with not knowing a lot. We have to be okay with just wondering and getting really curious.
And the lockdown forced that for a lot of people, was like, okay, what do I do now? And for a lot of people, it was a lot of panic that they didn't know what to do. So they lost their identity, if you will. They were really wrapped up in that identity of who they are.
Yeah.
And it's interesting though that when you're talking about voices, that voice too is energy. And this is the whole thing with the shamanism, like all part of this energy that we put together and orchestrate into the world. So it's really helpful. So you're helping people to tap into their own voice, their own expression. Is that what you're doing now, and how you're helping people to find their
Yeah,
voice and let go of the
exactly.
supposed to?
Yes, exactly. So I have this program that I call Butterfly Bootcamp. And in Butterfly Bootcamp, which is where I help train people in shamanic artistry so that they can tap into whatever is their own unique gift. So we start with the foundation of the four winds, but I infuse creativity all through there. So we have creative practices and we have journaling practices and even actually painting and drawing, because sometimes when our psyche wants to talk to us, when our higher self wants to talk to us, there aren't really appropriate words to express what's actually really coming through.
Hmm.
So, drawing and painting can be a really beautiful way to just let it come through automatically. Don't judge it, don't say what it is, don't put words on it, but just let it come through. And that's what I also do. I do a lot of just vocalizing without singing specific words, because that's the vibration that's going to assist in the healing for the person.
Yeah, I just want to go back because some people may not be aware of this. What is that foundation, the four winds that you were talking about?
Oh, the Four Winds Society. Yeah, they are. So Alberto Villoldo is someone who I think, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 years ago, he was a medical anthropologist and ended up just spending a few decades in Peru, in the Andes, in the Amazon, studying with the shamans there. And essentially, what they told him is that 500 years ago or so, they had their what they call a pachacuti, the end of the world. And that was the arrival of the colonizers, right?
Mm.
And so their shamans went into hiding for 500 years. And just in like mid 20th century, they came out of hiding and have begun to say, it's time to share this knowledge. We need as many people on planet Earth right now to understand this knowledge, to understand how they can use shamanic energy medicine to heal, to purify. And even you talk about the roles we play, we have activities and processes to shed those roles, to release our attachments to those roles so that we don't have to be them. We can put it on as a hat if we want to. I can be a teacher sometimes. I can be an artist sometimes. I can be a mother and a lover and a friend sometimes, right? But we don't have to cling to that identity.
And I think it's a big thing. People don't even realize that they're attached to their identity. That is them. So once again, it's coming back to that supposed to list. And then the
Yeah.
lockdown took all that away. And now now you have to find that voice within them, their way forward to establish how do I live now and how do I move forward?
Everybody was like, "Can we get back to normal?" No, I do not. I never wanted normal. All my life, I never tried to be normal, but it kept coming to me. So yeah, I'm perfectly happy that we're not going back to normal.
But unfortunately, a lot of people are back to their attachments and what they're supposed to do because they have that identity and they're back to being exhausted. They're back to being in their pain. So that's what I'm really trying to remind people that you are the vibrant soul. There are no limitations.
Yeah, there's a couple of practices that I just learned how to do by myself. One of them is what I call recharging the love battery. So this occurred to me as there was a situation happening with my family and I was in Brazil and so I couldn't be there with my family and so I didn't have any way of going to be there physically present with them and so I just felt the need to send love, to just send love. And then one of my siblings was like, "I don't know what you were doing, but it's working." So what I decided, anyone can do this. To recharge your love battery, just sit, take your nice deep breaths, whatever your meditation practice is, and just send love out and start with somebody that you know and love. That makes it easy. Send them love. Then let it expand and just send them to everyone in your friendship and family circle, to everyone that's in your community, and then to everyone, even the people that you think you hate, because we don't actually really hate people. But that's a whole other story. What I found when I started doing that, I could just sit there and send out love. After a few minutes of it, I could feel it coming back into me through the back of my heart chakra area.
Hmm.
And that was like, as soon as we send love out, it comes back. As soon as we send love out, it comes back to us.
Yeah, because And science has proven it's all the quantum entanglement, that we're all in one big soup, if you will, and we're
Right.
all aspects of this one. So it is really that place of unconditional love.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think you said something people are going to have a hard time with, and let you dive into this some more. We really don't hate people. Some people
Mm.
really are really adamant that they dislike someone. So how do you define that?
The thing is, most of the time, when we think we hate someone, it's because they're presenting our shadow to us
Mm,
and they're showing us something about ourselves that we don't like. And I learned this when, because as I was going through this training with the shamanic energy medicine, the Four Wind Society, there was also the 2020 election in the United States, which was its own, pardon my French, shit show. And when I was trying to wrap that all through my head, and I was trying to, we have this commitment. We walk the way with no enemies in this lifetime or the next. And we also walk the path where we are trained to be warriors, but we never ever fight. And we have to look at all of our triggers and we have to learn to just let them go. And so we do not engage. And what I had to do driving around and seeing all the Trump flags up in my neighborhood, I was getting really triggered. I was like, how could these people possibly look at this person who has no decency, no ethics, no morals, no care for his fellow man? How could they look at him and be excited about him? And I really didn't understand it. And then I realized I actually had to go through and I was reading this book by Naomi Klein, Shock Doctrine. I don't know if anybody's read it. It's a big, a thick book, but she was talking about how this economic warfare, let's just go ahead and call it economic warfare. This economic warfare that occasionally happens in countries all over the world has been a purposeful and directed strategy from folks who have trained in what they call the Chicago School. I don't want to go into the details, but I was reading it and I was reading what she was saying about the Pinochet dictatorship in Chile. And she was describing how he described leftists and academics and journalists and artists, describing them as a disease that needed to be eradicated. And at that moment, I realized, oh, wow, that's how I view Trumpism. Or I did view it. I viewed it as a disease that needed to be eradicated. And I could see that in the seeds of my own beliefs, I was being shown what Trump was doing. And I had to really go, okay, all right, he's showing me that we all have that capacity to judge and to condemn and to hate, but we can't hold on to it. We have to just release ourselves of it and just acknowledge that he's showing me something that it's part of my potential, but I choose not to act on it.
mm.
So when we show love, we release our attachments to that trigger as well. So yeah, the fact that we think we hate people, it's really just us not wanting to face some shadow aspect that is glaring at us in the face.
And then you also touched on a very interesting aspect that I never thought of, that we're all trained to be warriors. We're always taught to defend ourselves and our opinions and beliefs. Once again, it's back to that attachment that I am this belief, I am this opinion, and we defend this. And we do get this warrior mentality, and it doesn't serve us. And I frequently say is that if you're dealing with cancer, some disease, you don't want to battle, you don't want to fight it. That's going to keep it in place. So once again, it's that warrior mentality, and I never thought of that before. So how do you break down that warrior mentality within your clients, if you will, of let go of the warrior, let go of the attachment, just let go and just be you?
I find that really the best and strongest and most powerful practice for that is a forgiveness practice releases both us and the other person. It does more for us than it does the other person, actually, but it just forgiving and forgiving, you don't have to tell the person. It doesn't have to be public. It doesn't have to be like, I have to call you up and apologize, because that's a performance of forgiveness.
Mm,
True forgiveness happens very quietly right here in our hearts. And it includes self-forgiveness, forgiving ourselves for making mistakes, forgiving ourselves for not living up to our own expectations or someone else's expectations, forgiving other people for not living up to our expectations. To me, forgiveness is really the best way to release any of those impulses that make us want to fight.
yeah, absolutely. Another thing, another slippery slope for a lot of people is expectations, getting into that really judgment of self that I didn't do this, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, and we just start beating ourselves up again. So, what
Yeah.
do you say to people that are really have these unrealistic expectations, if you will, and they really beat themselves up over them?
I find that for me personally, I have to give myself permission to do nothing a lot. I have to give myself permission to just take a nap in the middle of the day. I have to give myself permission because, again, now I'm a recovering workaholic. So for somebody who can't get off the couch, my medicine is probably not going to be good for them. But for somebody who's a perfectionist overachiever, then we have to learn how to be okay with doing nothing. So you can set your intention and you can focus your energy on whatever the desired outcome is, but then we have to just let go.
Mm.
It's the letting go. It's really, in some ways, it's the hardest part of the work that we do.
Is letting go. That is probably the hardest aspect is to let go of our attachments, our
Yeah.
identity, who we are, the workaholic, the perfectionist, whatever label we want to pin on ourselves, that is the
Yeah.
hardest to let that go.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the battles of life that doesn't need to be there, that relax your vibrant soul. You'll always be a,
Relax your vibrant soul. I love it.
you just relax your vibrant soul that we're appearing now in this body, but this body will eventually disappear, but you're
Yep.
still the vibrant soul.
Exactly. And that's the other thing that to me has been so just, it's really the juiciest part of it is that once we start to really realize and get a sense that our soul, our vibrant soul, whatever you want to call it, that eternal infinite part of ourselves, when we spend more time connecting to that and less time connecting to all the nudgy details that keep us really annoyed, we start to really get a much better perspective on everything, on life, on all the bullshit, on work, on relationships. And it's just a practice of just shifting your consciousness and your awareness just a little bit higher than wherever you've been before. It's a place of much stronger inner peace for me.
And people have all these complicated processes, and I simply tell them, I'm not sure what you feel. I tell them we simply when to connect to the high, greater essence is just a matter of learning to be here, be present in this moment. And most people don't know what that is, how to be present.
Yeah. I know. And the people that don't know what that means, it's really difficult to teach that if they've just never even conceived of it before.
They don't know what be present it is. And it's, realize right now you're sitting where are your feet right now. That's being present.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Just acknowledging, "Oh, my body ends right here," right? It ends right oh, I can touch the end of my body. But again, that's just the body, right?
That's being present, just being that simple awareness that this is my flesh and just being
Yep,
aware of that. Most of the time, we're so caught up in the drama, the stories, the
yep,
workaholic, the perfectionist, whatever it may be, the warrior. I think there's
yeah.
way too much warrior. And we see this all over the place, the battle against cancer. All
Yeah, everybody likes to have a war on something, but the war on drugs didn't work, the war on cancer's not gonna work, right?
right,
And I do think there are one of the I've been a big fan of martial arts for a long time. And I think the reason I've been a big fan of martial arts for a long time is because when a person has to go through the effort of training their physical body to do those sort of high performance techniques, You do also have to have a high performance mind, body, spirit connection. The best warriors do also have this kind of like very spiritual connection, because that's also about not like being able to avoid and being able to just use the other people's energy against them, so that you're not actually doing any harm. You're just defending yourself.
Just redirecting energy.
Exactly.
That's all it is. And I think like martial arts or any activity, it forces you to be present.
Yeah,
If you're
it
not
does.
present, you
Yeah.
can't do those moves if you're not
Yeah.
present.
I'm going to tell you a funny story. Speaking of fighting and warriors, and one of the exercises that in our training they had us do was, they told us, they broke us into 4 groups, and there was like 80 people in the class or something. So they broke us into 4 groups, and they instructed us that each group was going to send an attack of some sort to the next group. And we were told those people are going to attack you and you're going to attack them. And so it went in a circle. And then our job, because we're trained to defend ourselves from psychic attack, and then our job was to defend ourselves. And at first I was like, this is wrong. I was like, this is ethically wrong. Like the fact that they're asking us to send an attack of some sort, I was like, this is on blah, blah, blah. I was like beside myself. And then within our little group, there was a pretty evenly matched divide between one half of the class was like, no, we're not fighting. We are only sending love. We are only sending love. That is all we are ever supposed to do. We are shamans. We are healers. We never, ever attack. And then there was another side that was like, yeah, but those guys are attacking, so we need to send them back too. And we never, I don't know that we ever found the right blend, but when it got to the most chaotic, I just started singing.
Mm.
I just started singing. And I started singing about a song that talks about the relationship between light and dark and how we need them both. And everybody got really quiet. And it was, the experience was interesting because even when we are trained as healers, some of us still hold on to those desires to fight. But really, truly, it's just all about love and protection.
Right. Recharging the love battery.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's all recharge our love battery every day.
Especially toward ourselves. That's the
Oh, so many of us forget to care for ourselves and love ourselves. It's so ridiculous how often I see that.
because we have, once again, it's back to those expectations, those high demands and expectations. We forget, no, I have to do this perfectly, and we're beating ourselves up. We forget to love me. This is my experience right here, right now. Love me. But we get so
Yeah.
hung up on the exterior conditions, the limitations we're putting on ourselves, the false expectations, and it just goes on and on with life.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing that I have found repeatedly, and I just keep trusting that it's going to stay this way, is that I tend to have really big dreams. I tend to dream really pie in the sky high. I never actually achieve what I think I'm setting out to do, but I always get somewhere really cool. I always get somewhere really cool. So I just keep dreaming really high and then just waiting until, oh, let's see what's going to show up instead of that. Oh, this is really cool too.
Because the universe is always delivering your greatest good when you're in that space of love, appreciation, gratitude. You get that synchronicity in life, and you just say, this is my dream, but I'm going to let it go and let the universe deliver what I need.
Yeah.
And you need all these experiences. We're here for these experiences.
Yeah, we are. We're here to experience what it is to be alive and what it is to love.
Right. Yep. To
Yeah.
enjoy life. We forget to enjoy life. That
Yeah.
it's so temporary, this life.
Yeah. Yes, that is true. That is true.
Yeah.
We
So
want to
one of the
try to
things,
get out consciously, right?
yeah, get out consciously. So I know we were talking a little bit before we went live with the show that you have this program coming in September. We really didn't talk much
Oh,
about
right.
this
Yeah.
program in September. So I'm really
Mm.
curious of how you're getting your light into the world.
So this actually came through as a kind of a crazy, massive download about a month ago. It was one of those, it was a Sunday afternoon and it just came down so fast. I tried to say what was happening to my partner and he looked at me like he had no idea what I was talking about. I was like, let me just go write it down. So what came through was that this YouTube series is basically going to be my own journey through the medicine wheel as I teach it in Butterfly Bootcamp, which is my 6-month transformational program. So what I'm going to be doing is once a week for the first 3 weeks of September, I'm going to be in Arizona, which is where I'm from. So it's 21 days in the desert, my little spiritual pilgrimage. Each week, I'll be addressing one life issue because that's what we do when we enter the medicine wheel in the South. We say, what are our 3 life issues that we want to resolve through this work? And so each week, I'm going to be in meditation about that life issue and channel through a song for that life issue. And then on the Saturday morning live stream, I'll tell the story of what that healing is. And then I'll sing a rough version of whatever new song has come through. So I'll do that for the first 3 weeks of September, then take a break because what I have learned is that you can't work all the time. You have to take regular breaks. So nothing happens the 4th week of September. Then October is going to be 3 weeks facing death. And what that is the process by which we look at 3 past lives. The past life where we suffered the most, and that's where we heal our inner victim. The past life where we had the most power and abused it, and that's where we heal our inner perpetrator. And the past life where we had the most power and used it for good, and that is to heal our inner rescuer. Because sometimes we forget that when you go through the drama triangle, you have to heal all 3. Some people go on and on as rescuers, thinking that's how they're going to resolve all their life's crises, but they're just chronic people pleasers and they're not taking care of themselves, right?
Yeah, so that sounds like a fascinating program. So one of the things I'm
Right?
thinking of right away when I was mired in all these issues myself is how do you pick just 3 life issues?
Yeah. How do you pick just 3? Exactly. You have to decide what are the 3 most important ones. And that also comes through meditation. And I also like to use the tarot. Whenever I am not sure about a decision, I use the tarot to give me guidance. It helps me just see a little bit more clearly. But 3, if you try to do more than 3 life issues, you're probably trying to do too much. You might be a workaholic, perfectionist, overachiever. So 3 is a good number because it's doable, it's achievable. And at the time that I entered this work, the 3 life issues that I was working with were chronic pain and chronic fatigue, right? I was trying to work through that. So I have one medicine stone that tends to be specifically for that purpose. One of the other ones was guilt and shame because of so many things. Guilt and shame are 2 of the most useless emotions that I can think of. And so for me, I needed to heal those with love, really, with self-love and self-forgiveness. And what was the other one? Oh, just scarcity mindset. Both my parents grew up in the Depression. And so I think those money habits end up being very hard to unlearn. So those for me at the time felt like the most important life issues for me, but I don't think they're going to be different. I don't think they're going to be the same. I think they're going to be different when I start next month.
Because I think a lot of people are dealing with those issues, especially guilt, shame. It's once again those expectations that we set up for ourselves. It's just a good way to make yourself unhappy, to hang
Oh,
on to that stuff.
it's like a speedway to unhappiness.
And plus too, we're and all this scarcity mindset that we have out there too, that there's not enough to go around, and we get into this competitive state, back to the warrior, back to fighting because there's not
Right.
enough resources. We got to battle over these morsels and these crumbs. No, there's a whole infinite, abundant universe there.
And also, we are being programmed by marketing machines to feel less than if we don't buy all the things, all the stuff, all the things that we think we want, which then puts us back on the hamster wheel of, I got to make more money so I can buy all the things that I feel like I have to have, that I'm incomplete without that, whatever it is on Amazon.
Yeah, with that widget that you get it and you're like, oh, a month later, you're forgotten about it.
Oh man. So many kitchen gadgets that I just like, I used once and I'm like, this is a pain in the butt to clean. I'm not using this again.
Absolutely. Then you talk another important topic that I think a lot of people need to can really have a lot of emotions around with that isn't really processed, and that's death. Really facing that this is not our first rodeo. It won't be our last rodeo, but we get hung up onto this identity once again that I am this body. So I think it's so critical that you're doing like, here's some past lives that you've had, here's some of your past experiences. And I think that alone is such a gift to say we can let go of this fear so we can enjoy life. Let's take a look where you had these experiences in the past. So
Yeah, and I'm really glad you talked about how few of us are ready to face death, because for me that has been the most liberating, is look at it and be ready to die and say, you know what? If I died next week, I feel like my life has been complete. That to me, and sometimes I get away from that and sometimes I come back. And if I'm away from feeling okay, like I recently, someone I know passed that affected me more than both of my parents. Because both of my parents, I was prepared for their deaths. I was prepared for the passing. It felt very natural. It felt like the right timing. But when someone gets taken from us, what we think is too early, it can be, and really it's just our mortality facing us going, yeah, are you really sure? Are you really sure you're okay to die? Maybe you have some more work to do.
yeah, and one of the things I think it's also important is that there's a specific quality to energy, to the energy of grief. There's a very specific energy quality for that, so it becomes really sticky, if you will. I don't know what the right word is for the
Yeah.
energy of grief is really
Yeah. And
hard to.
I don't remember if I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning that I do work with grief also. I have a creative grieving program. And I also have a workshop that I'm starting next month as well that I call the Widow Bride Workshop. Because one of the realizations I had, this actually came to me when I was preparing for my very first ever ayahuasca experience down in Brazil a couple of years ago. And there was this little bird that I kept seeing all over the place. And the name of the bird is Viúva Noivinha, which literally translates as widow bride. And I was like, wow, what a weird name for a bird. What a weird concept. And then I suddenly had this realization that every wedding day is a funeral too. Because
Mm,
in order for us to leave the single version of ourselves behind and to really step into the partnered version, it's a new identity. And if we don't take the time to grieve for what we can no longer be and to mourn for that past version of ourselves, we're going to end up being so bitter that that skill of grieving for a version of ourselves we can no longer be, like the way we would grieve for someone who's gone. If we can apply those skills in life, for me, I feel like life is so much easier when if something happens that I don't like, or there's a big shift that I don't like, I can say, oh, I'm going to grieve for that. I'm going to honor the experience of having known that person or that thing. I'm going to create some piece of art out of it. I'm going to cut the cords of the attachments that I might have to that person or that situation. I'm going to learn the lessons and I'm going to receive the gifts. Like, how am I a better person now because I went through that?
such an important point that we don't even think about, that we leave the single life, if you will, into the partner, and that the energy is completely different, the dynamics and all of that. So
Yeah.
important
And
work.
if we don't know that, if we walk right into it blindsided, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I miss my glory days. I miss when I was single and fun, partying all the time. Okay. Yeah. It's a different life.
Yeah, much different life, but it's an important point that most people don't even think about.
Yeah.
They
And I
don't.
think it encourages us to really. Now, I don't really believe in the institution of marriage myself, but my partner and I, we don't really believe in it. However, whether you believe in the institution of marriage or not, when you can consciously come to each other and just be honest about what do we want to get out of each other from this relationship? What do you need? What do I need? How can we share and reciprocate without it feeling codependent, right? Because codependency is also the fast track to unhappiness as well. So it's that balance between interdependence, right? Where we acknowledge that we are a unit and we help each other and support each other, but we don't cling to it so tightly.
Exactly. We've covered so much in this little bit of time. It's just
I
like
know, right?
overwhelming that you're going to go back through this a few times and go through it and absorb it and all this information. So we'll try to go back a few things. So this YouTube series, is it live or is it a
Yeah, I'm going to be
pre-record?
doing it live.
So they're
Yeah.
going to have the recordings there too to watch if they don't
Yeah. Yeah.
if they don't get to it. And then
Exactly. And it'll go. So the first live one is going to be in September, and then it goes through, I think, April of next year. And it's like periodic chunks based on how I go through the medicine wheel through Butterfly Bootcamp. The website is just laurelannporter.com.
when I hear these programs, this is a fun adventure for the vibrant souls. Let's have these fun experiences. We are the vibrant soul. Let's
Yeah.
enjoy life. Let's get out of this painful and exhausting existence that we have right now. Being a workaholic or however we define ourselves,
Yeah.
we need to liberate ourselves from that, dance, celebrate, be that vibrant soul, and new ways of looking at things. And I think you're really helping people with this in many different aspects. I can't believe all the different aspects that from the life issues that we're dealing with to death, to guilt, shame, to, well, all the
It's
smorgasbord
so
of
much.
activities.
Yeah.
But
And
it all goes back to that medicine wheel, though. I'm sure you can
yeah,
tie all this
absolutely.
together.
Yeah. It all goes back to the medicine wheel. It all goes back to our healing process is a layered process, which is why we go through the medicine wheel more than one time, because you don't just fix yourself once and you never need to do any work again, right? It's always a process of learning new things, releasing new things, deepening the healing, just elevating our soul even higher.
It's like a wheel because people will say, I'm done with this. No, no one has stuck a fork in you and said, you're done. Now
Right?
life continues.
Yep. Life just keeps going right on, whether we like it or not.
It just keeps on moving forward. We have to be prepared for it. We're free. We are this free soul, this free spirit, but we get caught up. Like you had this insight 20 years ago, but you fell into that supposed to list. And a lot of people are into this supposed to list and they're not living their life. They're not enjoying life.
I realized the other day that what I do for folks in this program is we teach each other how to trust ourselves again. Because I
Mm.
think many of us don't trust ourselves. And in order to get to the point where we can trust ourselves again, it takes this work. It's the healing work. It's the deep healing work.
And that's such another important aspect that I really remind people is that we're taught not to trust yourself, that someone else has your answer. It's you have the answer, but we don't trust ourselves.
Yeah.
So we go searching and searching, and
Right.
then eventually we come back to ourselves. Like, and you,
Exactly.
and you had that 20-year detour yourself, had a 38-year detour. We all get these detours, but it's all good.
And the detour was beautiful, right? If I look back at my life, it was totally windy and weird, but actually all of those experiences have led me here and have made me who I am.
Perfect. I think it's a perfect ending. Thank you for coming into the conversation and bringing your light into the world, such a beautiful light.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I just feel like it's time to go out and encourage as many people as possible to shine their light,
It's
to
it's
shine your vibrant light.
it's really that simple. And thank you again. Lots of love and blessings to you.
Yeah, to you as well. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.